Hello and welcome to the Snap UK podcast, your one-stop podcast shop for all the NFL news and views you need. This week's show is the culmination of the season as we review the Super Bowl, announce our season MVPs, and begin to look forward to the 2020 campaign. We were lucky enough to be at the Doghouse on Sunday night with almost all of our NFL buddies, more food and alcohol than you can shake a stick at, and a bunch of Niners fans. So let's see what we can remember, how it all looks in the cold light of day, and whether or not the right team won. Jim.
So about that 2020 campaign.
Looking favourites to get back, Jim.
Oh, I don't know about that.
No, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure either. Somebody was selling it to me at the weekend that both those teams could be back in the championship games.
That was me.
Well,
The last team that Shanahan coached that got to the Super Bowl, they reacted very well to
they
losing
did.
it.
In no way was there a hangover.
Well, he reacted very well and left.
I think Falcons got into the
Playoffs.
playoffs the following year without Shanahan, though.
Yeah, but they shit the bed this season.
Yeah.
Make sure you get that one in before we finish the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm glad,
definitely.
yeah. And there's-
Excellent.
Should we talk about Super Bowl?
I mean, over to you is all we can do. You've handled it very well and maturely, I think.
Well,
until now.
I said to a lot of people before the game began, A, that it was going to be a good game for the neutral fans, and I think it was. And B, if I wasn't a 49er fan, I probably would have been supporting the Chiefs no matter what, because I think Andy Reid's a great coach. The Chiefs is a storied franchise that have not won the Super Bowl in 50 years, and I think Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the league. Having said that, I am a 49ers fan, and I was being pretty much depressed for the last 48 hours. And it comes down to I think kind of the media have now got 100 or so days or whatever it is to look back on this, and this is all they got to report on, and it's going to keep coming back to two things. One, did Kyle Shanahan bottle it again? They lost a 10-point lead, and two, is Jimmy Garoppolo a quarterback capable of winning the Super Bowl? I think there's two storylines which probably are unfair. Kyle Shanahan probably didn't make some calls we expected him to. I think they passed the ball a bit more than we expected to. They didn't run the ball as much. Saying that, the Chiefs' run defense was very, very good. Garoppolo missed one throw that would have probably sealed the Super Bowl for 49ers, the long ball in the fourth quarter to Emmanuel Sanders, which he overthrew. And apart from that, you can't really say Shanahan did much wrong.
He didn't win.
He didn't win, no. But, the Chiefs are a good... They're an amazing team. We all said it coming into the game. And actually to keep them to, 10 points through three quarters of football was a remarkable achievement. But then, obviously, the fourth quarter happened and it all went tits up.
Started to believe.
This game went more or less the way I said to you that it would go, that if you weren't more than two scores ahead into the fourth quarter, the cornerbacks would get tired and the fastest three players in the league would run past them, and you've got a quarterback there who doesn't miss. So the difference between Patrick Mahomes and Jimmy Garoppolo is that final 5%.
Even on that one, they had one big chunk play, didn't they? And the Chiefs were 3rd and 14 or 3rd and 15.
3rd and 15, yeah.
And it was one blown coverage where I think Emmanuel Mosley bit on the route underneath, and suddenly Tyreek Hill was free. It was the one time
44-yard catch.
Yeah, it was the one time that they've actually given up that big chunk play, and it's just so happens it's probably the most important chunk play, because if they would have stopped them there, there's a very good chance that the 40 would be talking very differently now when the 49ers would be Super Bowl champs.
I feel really sorry for that call on Kittle.
Yeah,
So
I was
the pass
going to bring that
interference.
up as well.
Okay, well, let's tackle that first then, so to speak. There were 9 penalties in the game, which is not a lot.
No,
they were letting most of these go. There was a
lot.
face mask that wasn't given. There was a couple of hits on Mahomes that in a regular season game I think would have been called.
There was a hit on Garoppolo out of bounds,
Absolutely.
which wasn't called as well. There was a lot of holding as well. I've gone back and watched a lot of the highlights of the last day or so.
Everyone was holding Bosa because that's the only way you could stop him. So, pass interference or not, what do we think? I will jump in first and I will say I never want to see that given as pass interference. It's just two blokes fighting with hands, and there wasn't enough there. The defender sold it brilliantly. He did the proper jerk back of the head to make it look like he was really shoved away. That's his job.
I don't think Kittle pushed off. He did have an extended arm, and by the letter of law, that it was a penalty. But then we saw the Carl Rudolph one in the playoffs not given earlier in the season. So, I don't mind it being given, but then let's have consistency throughout the season.
I think the problem you've got is if the coach challenges that, they're going to stick with the ruling on the field. It's so hard to overturn. How many were overturned this season? Was it 9 all season were overturned? It wasn't many. It was such a low percentage.
It was a token gesture that kind of meant nothing. I felt it just shut the Saints fans up.
They had to do it for the Saints fans. So wouldn't surprise me to get rid of it because it's been absolutely pointless.
Yeah, it has. I mean, that was an important... That kill.
Yeah, it was an important
play because 49ers probably would have got at least 3 points there from a field goal, if not 7 from a touchdown, going into halftime.
That was a 6. I mean, how tall is Kittle?
6'3" or 4.
Touching a 5'10" bloke while running.
Yeah,
he's going to. I didn't think that was PI.
He played the game, and he got the penalty. It's we've seen him given. They probably shouldn't be given, but it's one of those things.
How many times have we seen defensive PI, though, where we're like, that is just never, ever a foul, and it's been given, and it's cost that defensive team 40 yards, say, and we all sit there going, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Sooner or later, it's going to catch an offensive player out, and it just so happened to be in the Super Bowl. As controversies in playoff games go, it was limited, but it did cost you a minimum of 3 points.
I mean, I will say, like, throughout the whole of the playoffs this year, there's been no kind of outrageous controversies like we've seen in the last couple of years in terms of, bad calls or calls that might be made. So that's one good thing that the refs seem to have cleared up on. But yeah, it was harsh on Kittle. And I think.
How many receptions did Kittle have in the end? Was it 6?
4.
4 from 6 targets?
7.
7 targets. That's not enough.
No,
it's a very strange thing.
That was going to be my point as well. Like, if you look at kind of the yardage or even the number of receptions that Sanders, Kittle, and Samuel had the most, 5 for 39, Sanders 3 for 38, and Kittle 4 for 36. And they're your top 3 receivers, and I don't think they got enough of the ball.
Kittle's been your best player on offense this season
for the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, and I cannot understand that.
I would guarantee the 3 missed targets are in the second half when they had their 3. They missed him on 3 third downs, and it was Jimmy G. We'll get on to Jimmy G, but he missed Kittle on 3 third downs, I think it was, and it's just that it's not good enough.
Well, I don't think, if you look at it, I don't think either of the quarterbers played that well.
This was probably one of the worst 3 or 4 games I've ever seen him play. He's played 36 games. Let's not overblow this. He's played 36 games, which is, I don't know, 15 more than Jimmy Garoppolo or something. I don't know. Whatever. Garoppolo hasn't played that many either.
This was his first full season.
Yeah. Let's compare the quarterbacks. This is what I was getting at. So, in this actual game, there was probably only 5% difference between Mahomes and Garoppolo. It's just that 5% was 2 absolute dime completions of 44 and 38 yards. I don't know what the longest reception for a 49ers player was. I haven't got that in front of me.
26 yards.
But the overthrown ball to Sanders was the only time they went deep. That was the one time they said to Jimmy G, this is on you, deliver it. And he didn't. Now, that doesn't bother me. I've heard an awful lot about, I don't think you can win with him. I absolutely think you can. In his first full season, a year after an absolutely crippling injury, he just got to the Super Bowl. He may not be the game winner. He may never be the reason you win the Super Bowl. But he isn't the reason you didn't win the Super Bowl.
No.
He's only 5% worse than Patrick Mahomes in this game.
I think the reason we didn't win the Super Bowl is Patrick Mahomes.
Of course
it is. In the fourth quarter.
This was 2 great teams this year, and one of them had to lose.
Mahomes obviously has the full backing of Andy Reid. You know, the game's on the line. He's going to put it in Mahomes' hand and say, "Win me this game."
With confidence as well.
With confidence. Yeah. I think Shanahan has full belief in Jimmy G. The end of the first half, they had the ball, and Shanahan had 3 timeouts, and he let the clock run. And then
gave it back. And
Andy Reid did not run out to half time, did he? He tried to go down the field and score.
It's.
I agree exactly with what you're saying.
I just feel Jimmy G, I think, is a good quarterback. He's just, I think Shanahan doesn't believe that he can win a game.
I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's an elite quarterback.
I would say that Mahomes is the best quarterback we've seen in the last 2 years, right? In just that 2-year sample, he's the best quarterback.
Easily.
Everybody?
Easy.
I would say Jimmy G is a lot closer to Baker Mayfield than he is to Patrick Mahomes.
Baker Mayfield last season.
Baker Mayfield as an average in those 2 years. I would say Jimmy G is closer to that than he is to Patrick Mahomes. I don't think the gap the whole season might only be 20%, but he's just closer to that end of the scale. He hasn't done enough things in games yet for you to trust him to win. If Brady has Brady, for instance, has had 2 fairly rubbish Super Bowls, but then in the final quarter, he's turned up and won the games. And the difference is you always think... I mean, when we sat there years ago and watched the Falcons-Patriots game, and I sat there going into fourth quarter, banging my head on the desk still, and you lot were like, no, you're going to win. Because you'd all seen it done before.
It's the trust.
Yeah.
Belichick trusts Brady because he's done it.
Did
trust.
And this is what you're getting at. I don't think the trust from Shanahan is quite
and
there.
I think it affects how he plays. He didn't really give it to Jimmy G until he had to, right at the end. And that's when the interception happened.
I mean, the first couple of quarters, there was a lot of play action passes as well to give him more time. You know, Garoppolo needs probably another second and a half compared to the kind of elite quarterbacks just to be able to find someone. And that's done through a good running game and b a good play action game off the back of that. So they have got the scheme to be able to do it. So, what I don't want is for I think someone said it on another broadcast that they don't want Kyle Shanahan to be the next Andy Reid, where he's going to have to wait a number of years, be this offensive genius, but wait 10, 20 years to get back to the Super Bowl.
Is the division you're in.
Yeah. Oh, no.
There is no guarantees. Because you'd imagine the Rams will be better.
Well, the Rams have got to get Super Bowl last year. Okay, they had a bit of a hangover. Seahawks have proved that no matter how bad their roster might look, they can still play good football and be a challenger. And the Cardinals, I think, are get better with Kyler Murray under centre. So
that's the toughest division.
It's a tough division to get out, but then also all 4 of those teams are going to be beating each other up. So you're not going to get a bye because I think each team is capable of beating the other. So anyone that goes through is probably not going through with 14, 13 wins.
No, Jimmy G's first quarter, certainly first half interception. It was the one in the first quarter where Breland picked him off. Now, that is what makes me say he's closer to someone like Baker because he basically closed his eyes and threw the ball up. And he does that 2 or 3 times a game.
Yeah.
And that is the thing he's got to get rid of. That he needs that bit more maturity. It's almost like he just thinks, I'm going to throw it. Do you know who else does that? Winston. And now, I'm not putting them in the same boat. Garoppolo is a better quarterback right now. But that reaction is the same.
I think he needs to know when to throw it, but also when to throw it away as well.
Just take the sack.
There was a couple of instances where I think he ran out of play and cost us yards where he could have just thrown it away. And that you mentioned that interception. Yeah, either just take the sack or just throw it away.
Why have we never started a podcast called Take the Sack?
Because
we did mention this, and we decided it was probably not the right image.
Yeah,
there's a whole new market of listeners we could attract, though.
Does he close his eyes and fear the sack? if he doesn't have the injury last year, because is he scared?
No, I don't. Because I don't.
Anyone closes their eyes at that point.
I mean, but when you've got Frank Clark and Chris Jones.
Oh yeah, but still, close your eyes and just lob it rather than just close your eyes and have the wherewithal to throw it out of bounds.
But he needs to learn to close his eyes and have a lob on.
Yeah,
he just needs to get a lob on. Throw it out the pitch.
Sometimes you've got to take Frank Clark's sack in the face, haven't you? And just get it done. You've got to wear Frank Clark's sack, is what you're saying.
The thing that I'd say to you is if he was worried about the sack because he hurt his knee last time getting the sack.
But no,
he didn't get the
hurt
sack
his
at
knee
all.
running.
Right, but he was running out of running to the sideline. Yeah. He wouldn't have done that if he was worried about his knee.
That's fair.
It's maturity. He's still young.
Yeah. It is maturity.
Games played.
I do think the Chiefs' defense definitely stepped up in that third and fourth quarter because
this was one of the best games the Chiefs' defense has played all season.
Absolutely,
and much, much better than they played last season.
Yeah.
Chris Jones was immense. He's a free agent, but they will re-sign him. They have to.
They got rid of Justin Houston, who you thought they'd have to re-sign.
No, I think Chris Jones, with Chris Jones' age as well, he's still young.
The play in I think it was the third quarter where they sent the house rushing, and he just stood there and waited for Jimmy G to throw the ball and just put his arm up and blocked it. He could have waited all day. He knew exactly what was going to happen. And that is a game-changing defender, right? Yeah. He has the same effect for the Chiefs as J.J. Watt does for the Texans.
Yeah, I think you look at the 2 free agents on that Chiefs, the 2 impending free agents on that Chiefs team, Chris Jones is one, and Kendall Fuller as well, who's got the interception.
Yeah, on the defence, and then on the offence, Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Now-
I
now,
think they'll let him go.
I think they'll let him go,
Yeah,
but
13.5 million.
But he's turned up in the playoffs, hasn't he?
he now has the Chiefs' record for receiving yards through a postseason, 223 receiving yards. He's turned up at the right time of the year. He turned up in this game with one great catch for 38 yards. I mean, yeah, he probably will get to test the market, but he may well just go somewhere else and take a better deal, or he said he's going to sit out a year.
Well,
He's already said, I'll just probably stay at home if we win the Super Bowl.
if you're paying Tyreek Hill 17 million, can you really afford to pay Sammy Watkins 21 million?
No,
No.
but you do have to remember the worth of having two players that teams have got to cover.
I know.
Cole Hardman,
Yeah, they've,
Absolutely.
I think they've got
The
to
draft.
now.
Kelsey.
I'm just saying, I think if Sammy Watkins is going to turn up in this time of year, he still has some value, but he doesn't have that value to a lot of teams. Because he's been to several other teams. He's not been very good.
He's not $21 million of value.
No.
I think you can get
When you have
you can get a second or third.
He'll restructure the deal, surely, if he wants to stay.
You could get a Sammy Watkins comparable
Yeah.
player for less money.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
they've got a cap space of 16 million.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not
they've got
good.
to pay Chris
Wait.
Jones.
They've got to pay Chris Jones.
So they've got a cap space of 0. is what
Aren't
you're
they
saying.
having to pay Patrick Mahomes soon as well?
No,
They
end
could-
of next year?
They might. There was also they might pay him early, but
Oh,
they
really?
don't have to until next year.
I don't think they can afford to do that yet. They've got other things to worry about. You don't pay your quarterback until you have to, because once you do that, you have to deconstruct the rest of the team.
Well, the only way
Yeah.
you do it is if you structure a deal if you've got cap space now, to be able to structure a deal to pay him a lot more now and less later on, and they're not in that position. So it's difficult to see how they can pay him what he's worth. And let's face it, he's getting 40+ million a year.
Now, a player
Easy.
who gets paid a fair amount of money for his position but showed his worth was Kyle Juszczyk. Now, we've been laughing
Another
for a few
upcoming free
years.
agent, actually.
Yeah, we've been laughing for a few years about how much the weapon gets paid, because for a couple of years he was just a fullback. Now he is the fullback in the league.
You're beginning to see the emergence of the fullback. I mean, not to the level Kyle Juszczyk is doing it. He's clearly the elite fullback in the league.
Yeah,
But you're seeing the beginning of other fullbacks like Jordan Devlin. When he's
James
kids.
Devlin.
Yeah, that guy. Jordan Devlin's a
Jay Devlin.
Jay Devlin.
I'm thinking of Jordan Devlin,
Devlin
the
the
wrestler.
Oh yeah, you don't want to think of him.
The
No, I
Irish
mean,
ace.
I said to you earlier into the playoffs that I think the thing that cost New England the most this year was not having the fullback, because Sonny Michel was nothing without Devlin blocking for him.
Turned into Panasonic Michelle.
Yes, he absolutely did.
Yeah,
Well
Juszczyk earns pretty much 3 times as much as the next fullback.
Yeah.
which is DeMarco at the Bills.
And he was brilliant. The turn when he caught the ball for the first Niners touchdown, the stop with the catch and the turn and then the spring into the end zone, all in one move.
He almost got a second
For
as
a
well.
guy that
Yeah.
big is immense.
Yeah,
I was really impressed with him.
I think he's another free agent coming into the. The 49ers also don't have a massive amount of cap space, but I feel with the 49ers they seem to have built this culture where I think players like Juszczyk probably love playing in that system.
He's not going to get used like that.
He
somewhere
won't
else.
get used like that somewhere else. He's probably going to say, I'm making decent money here. I'm on a team that's going to be competing. Maybe he'll structure a deal which is a bit more team friendly than it currently is.
You want to talk about the Niners' run game? I think they were averaging 6 yards a play on the rush, and I don't quite know why they went away from the run game.
Yeah, it was 6.5 yards on average per play, and
I really felt like they went away. You either got to go to the pass early and stay with it, or go all the way with the run, which is what got you through the playoffs.
I think that 6.5 yards per play is a little bit misleading. So there were a couple of big chunk plays, especially from Deebo Samuel. I thought had an excellent game.
Most rushing yards by a wide receiver in the Super Bowl, beating
Percy
Harvin.
There you go.
Renowned bellend, Percy Harvin.
Let's just hope Deebo Samuel doesn't go down that road.
Oh, don't forget, when we get to the end of this, you can talk about your segment for next year with the new coach at the Miami Dolphins. You want to call it Cunt's Corner?
Wasn't he Rusty Cunt?
Something like that. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I'm going to have to look it up now.
Did Shanahan outthink himself?
Yeah,
Possibly,
a little bit.
but you can't blame him.
I know.
They seem to go away because they were running a lot of the run game was to the perimeter of the line, kind of the outside runs rather than kind of the zone inside runs, which had got them into Super Bowl in the start place. Some of that is on the Chiefs' defense. Their run defense was great.
They were very good.
You couldn't run through the middle.
No.
They had to go to the edge, and I think you can only do that so many times. Like you can't be doing that on every single play because you get found out quite quickly. I do think they could have, they had all had players, but Coleman only had 5 carries.
He wasn't fit. They put him in there. They said he was fit. I don't think he was fit. They'd used him more.
But I would like to see kind of Jeff Wilson, who was in the game, have more carries if that was the case. Matt Breida didn't get on the field.
No, which is odd. How on earth does Matt Breida not feature in the game?
And I know obviously Mostert had an amazing championship game, 200 plus yards, but they could have cycled those running backs a bit
if
more.
you cycle those 4 or 3 of those 4, I think you can stick with the run game for longer because all 3 or 4 of them are capable of busting a 25-yard run.
And then you've got other players in that run game like Deebo Samuel. Some Sanders had runs, Richard James had runs.
Yeah.
Even Kittle's had a couple of run plays this year. So you're right. They didn't seem to do a good job of cycling those running backs. They could have done more, so they could have run more. I almost think kind of Shanahan was probably thinking, everyone's talking about us running the ball non-stop. Aha, screw them! I'm going to pass it now.
But was it Kittle? No, it was one of the Chiefs' defensive players. I can't remember which one. After the game, said, "Thank God they stopped running." I can't think. It was one of the safeties. He said, "Thank God they stopped running." That was in his interview,
and it wasn't like they were chasing the game, was it?
No,
and they needed to kill time off the clock.
And this is the problem Shanahan's got. I do not think this is on Shanahan, but it very much looks like the same as when the Falcons lost the Super Bowl because they went away from the run. They tried a pass play when they didn't need to and took a 20-yard sack on Matt Ryan and couldn't then take the field goal. And it looks like the same mistake repeated. It may be for a different reason. And the fact that he's been twice in 4 years with 2 different teams is incredible. Belichick always gets the credit for getting the Giants there. Well, Shanahan should have got a lot of the credit for getting the Falcons there.
Definitely.
Right? I'm not taking anything away from him. What I'm saying is the reason this story is going to brew is because there is something behind it.
Yeah,
it has to be.
And let's face it, he's going to go away. He's the type of coach, he's going to pore over this game and look for every little detail which kind of, perhaps cost him the game and come back probably stronger.
Who would you rather have on the last 2 Super Bowls that we've seen? Who would you rather have for next season, Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay?
Shanahan.
I
think if you look at,
I want Shanahan with John Lynch. I think that it's the organisation.
I think it's the organisation. I think a lot of the Shanahan does a lot of player evaluation, but you look at the 2 different rosters. You look at that Rams roster compared to the 49ers roster. McVay had some good weapons. Goff, Garoppolo, probably comparable. I'd say the Rams running back in Todd Gurley coming into the Super Bowl. Okay, he didn't do great in the Super Bowl. Was probably better in terms of quality. And I'd say their passing game and their receivers were that much better than what the 49ers got now. Also, the Rams defense. Then you're talking Donald, Ndamukong Suh, Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib. They're better star players than what the 49ers have got now. But I think the culture that Shanahan and John Lynch have built within that 49ers organisation is worth almost like an extra 3-7 points a game.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that it's the culture and the coaching that is like, how many teams have had players like a Foster and kept the bad apples on the team? They've got rid of them. They've got rid of the personalities. I really, it pains me to say it because I want to slag off the team that my mates support, but they're doing the right thing.
This is what I said to you on Monday when we went out on Monday. I said I got no joy in watching the Niners lose. Now I have had to sit in the Eagles Patriots game, where it was basically like sitting with a rabble shouting in my face.
It's because of the Patriots. Everyone hates the Patriots,
which is fine. But I thought, if they lose this on a late, long touchdown from Mahomes, I'm going to be delighted. And I wasn't, because I didn't feel like the Niners deserved to lose any more than I'd have felt the Chiefs deserved to lose. But that was a really good game. Let's not forget, it was 10-10 at half-time.
Yeah.
And then the Niners were 10 points up. This is only the 3rd time a team has gone into the 4th quarter of a Super Bowl 10 points down and won. And those 3 times have been in the last 7 years.
Yeah, Patriots.
And what links them all?
Tom Brady.
No. Yeah. Tom Brady didn't play this time.
Oh, Kyle Shanahan.
Well, Kyle Shanahan links 2 of them.
The AFC.
No.
NFL.
Basically, it's the 49ers. So Kyle Shanahan, coach of the 49ers, was a coach on the staff of the Falcons. So the Falcons were 25 points up. The 49ers were 10 points up. One other team was 10 points up going into the fourth quarter.
Seahawks.
Yeah.
Robert Saleh.
Richard Sherman.
Yeah.
Richard Sherman was on that defense for the Seahawks. So the 49ers as a group link the 3 times that this has happened.
So you're saying it's a culture of failure?
I'm saying that I said to John, I wouldn't be surprised if Richard Sherman says, I'm done.
Nah, point to prove. One more season.
Yeah, but he's not going to be better next season. He was better this season than we thought he would be. By that fourth quarter, he looked slow. It wasn't on him, but he looked slow because he was shattered. And I don't think he's going to be better next season. I think a sensible player looks at that and says, I've got a Super Bowl win, I've been to 3. It's probably not getting better.
You could put Jalen Ramsey in coverage against Tyreek Hill and he'd look
I'm
slow
not disagreeing with
after
you,
4
but it's
quarters.
like I said to Jim before the game. He does a brilliant job of keeping the game in front of him. As soon as that game is behind him, he's in trouble these days. He just is.
Yeah, he lost. He got beaten by Sammy Watkins on one play.
Which is fine. Nobody is disgraced by that.
No one wins. I don't think any cornerback wins every single.
Very few. Daryl Revis is the last one did, and maybe Gilmore this year.
Oh, Daryl Reeves is not good enough for the team of the 2010s.
He didn't play enough in the 2010s at a high enough level. He had one good season in the 2010s.
And a bad season which he won the Super Bowl.
Well, yes.
Anyway, we talk about
Not that you were bitter that you missed that.
He trademarked a part of the pitch.
let's talk about Patrick Mahomes being MVP.
Yeah.
Actually, can I mention before we get there? Can we mention Damien Williams' touchdown? Because you mentioned the
Which
bad,
one?
the bad.
last one.
Oh,
the
you
bad
mean
calls
the controversial Damien
and
Williams
the
touchdown?
controversial one.
Okay.
Where he's out. It's just whether the frame.
It's one of those ones where if it had been called no touchdown, it would have been no touchdown.
That one.
It's
Sadly, that is the image of Richard Sherman from the Super Bowl.
So that's
falling
Richard.
on his
So
face.
John is showing us an image of Richard Sherman's helmet right now.
And
very
also,
shiny.
Damien Williams' foot is out of play. When I watched it, I thought touchdown. I thought it was,
I'm sorry, but the thing for me with this particular image, this particular play, if he goes out at like the 15, it's a different scenario. He goes out at the 1.
Yeah,
they're likely on the next play to to score.
I think that's the only thing that saves it from being controversial is no one thought they wouldn't. Everyone was. We sat in the room and went, they're probably going to say that's no touchdown, but they'll score anyway.
I think there's so many. I mentioned 2 points. We've probably talked about another 3 or 4, 5 other points. That if they'd gone the other way, the 49ers would have won.
Yeah.
Or they'd gone. If other points had gone the Chiefs' way, the Chiefs would have won by more. And at the end of the day, like they went how they went. You don't know if they would have scored there, or it would have been a fumble or what. Whether the 49ers would have actually won.
I'm surprised there hasn't been more noise about it. This is the point John's making. I'm surprised we haven't heard more about it. If it had been called no score, that was no score because basically it was the difference in the frame time. They couldn't tell from one frame to the next whether he crossed the line at the same time or not because it just doesn't show. And so they had to stick with the call on the field.
Yeah, but if it's one of those ones that if it's called against your team,
I'd be heartbroken.
I'd still be talking about it.
I'd be heartbroken if that had been given against me because I don't think it was a touchdown.
I agree with Paul. I think it was on the 1 yard line. Even if it called a no touchdown, they probably would have scored.
Most likely. It just felt like it should have been more discussion about it. I
feel we have
it.
to mention it.
You just wanted to show me Sherman's helmet, didn't you?
I wanted to show you that picture, but I just wanted to mention it because I feel like we would be doing our job if we did it.
Do you know, this was one that surprised me. Chiefs and the Eagles, only teams with multiple fourth down conversions in a Super Bowl. I did not know this.
There you go.
I knew the Chiefs did it because we watched them do it the other day. I don't remember the Eagles doing it more than once. But
is Mahomes as good as Nick Foles?
Oh, yes.
Mahomes is better at Kansas.
I mean, we have no idea what he would play like anywhere else.
I'd say overall, Mahomes is the better quarterback. But actually, I think in that, if you look at
in the Super Bowl performance, Nick Foles had the better Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Yes,
and Nick Foles has currently been paid a shed load more than Patrick Mahomes.
He is.
He's just watching a guy with shit facial hair do his job and get paid $100 million. Where'd you sign up?
Mahomes is watching Andy Reid. Quarterbacks are always on a different level when it comes to MVP voting. They're probably favoured anyway. I think this is probably one of the poorest games I've seen Patrick Mahomes play through 3 quarters. Mm-hmm. I think he got it because no one else deserved it on the Chiefs team.
Damien Williams was the only other candidate.
I think
He may not have had a very good game. He's still the reason they won the game.
Yeah.
That is why you give him MVP. I agree. I have only seen him. I think, did he not play by the Eagles? Did the Chiefs get beaten by the Eagles? It was somebody they really should have beaten. And Mahomes just basically didn't turn up. It was the one time this season when he didn't play very well. I can't remember.
This is the first time I've seen him fit and play badly.
Yes.
Not badly, but not up to what you expect.
The two interceptions, one of them was bad, one of them was... It was good coverage. He was trying too hard. But
it's the best defense in the NFL.
Do you know he'd thrown 164 postseason passes before he threw an interception?
But hang on, you look at, on the Chiefs team, you look at Bashard Breeland. He had the most tackles, 7 tackles. He had 2 tackles for loss. He had an interception.
It's impressive stuff.
No one even talked about it.
And I thought Sorensen was really good.
Sorensen, I think he's been great as well. But I think there's always a bias towards the quarterback, and there's always a bias towards offensive players over defensive players.
It's an easier sell, isn't it? You know, Super Bowl MVP winning Patrick Mahomes, not, I'm going to Disneyland. What are you doing, Bashard Breeland? Who are you?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'd have given him the MVP for? When he got sacked, he didn't get sacked, when he fumbled the ball, he had the ball knocked out of his hand, and he did the reverse Cam Newton and dived under the mountain of people that were charging at him. And I hadn't even thought about the Cam Newton thing, but when you look at it like that, there was not for a second a hint of, I already got injured this season, I am not doing this. He was straight in like, this is my era, and he was so much better from that point on. Because I think people picked him up and said, go and win us this game now.
If you look at his stats. If this was any other game other than the Super Bowl, this is a regular season game. 26-42, 286 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks, quarterback rating of 61.
Yeah, that's just not good enough.
Not even
usually.
average.
No, it's pretty poor.
But
it's Gardner Minshew-esque.
Yeah,
is what that is.
He's the quarterback. It's a Super Bowl. His team won. So
yeah, but this is what we said. Brady's won it how many times? And he's only had 2 good Super Bowls, really. You know what I mean? Like, it's always
Eli Manning won it.
Manning won it twice, and he's just got 2 good passes in Super Bowls.
The stop clock was right twice.
Joey Bosa. Nick Bosa deserves some credit. Second most sacks in a rookie postseason.
In terms of
I've christened him Nicky Bosa.
Nicky Bosa.
Because it was easier to say. It sounded better shouting, come on, Nicky. Then come on, Nick. It flowed better.
I like that every part of the Sky coverage kept calling him Joey Bosa.
Yeah.
I've even seen it on the screen today when I was watching some highlights that I had the subtitles on because I was watching it at work, and it even said Joey Bosa, and that's what's put it in my head.
If 49ers would have won, I think it's a coin toss between Bosa and Armstead for them for MVP because they were superb.
They were good.
And Bosa was
just fantastic.
Buckner was also good as well. He had 1.5 sacks.
Yeah.
To contain Mahomes the way they did for 3 quarters or 2.5 quarters was amazing.
At the end of the day, they got let down by that one broken coverage play.
Which was always going to happen. It was just whether or not the 49ers had scored enough points in advance of that. I think the Chiefs held you to a 1.5 minute 3-play drive to get the ball back straight away. Yeah. And that was a killer. Yeah. Because the Chiefs' defence stepped up as the 49ers' defence fell off. And it was brilliant play from Reid. He just about kept his powder dry. And then, like you say earlier, he can trust Patrick Mahomes.
Like I said right at the start, you mentioned Andy Reid. We've probably not spoken enough about him. Like, he's gone how many years?
15 years.
15 years between Super Bowl appearances.
Longest gap ever for a
4 or 5 trouser sizes.
Since he got to the Chiefs, he's been in the playoffs every single year.
Yeah, with Alex Smith.
Alex Smith, and then with Patrick Mahomes.
Alex Smith is a very unloved player.
He is, yeah.
Not by me. I love him. I'm just saying, it doesn't compare to Patrick Mahomes.
We said before the Super Bowl that he's one of those coaches that 5 years after retirement, he is straight into the Hall of Fame because he's one of those offensive geniuses who's revolutionised parts of the game. Now he's got a Super Bowl ring. There's not even a question about him going to the Hall of Fame, I don't think.
Oh, no. He was going in anyway, but this cements the place. Yeah. He was effectively the Dan Marino of the coaching world, but this has just been the icing on the cake for him, and I was delighted for Andy Reid, I was
as well.
That's a lot of metal to make for that bust, isn't it?
I assume it's going to be hollow and full of chocolate.
It's probably good
they only do the head, it's fine.
It's 5 years notice, though. They probably need it.
We should mention that Williams leads the Chiefs now with 10 postseason touchdowns. That is impressive. He's only played there for 2 years.
But you think the Chiefs haven't really been that around the playoffs?
Well, they've been there the last 6 years.
Yeah.
No,
And-
but they
Championship game last year.
Yeah, they had Montana. They went a couple of years.
Yeah.
In the 90s. Like, it's not
Yeah,
like
they
they've...
had Marcus Allen.
Yeah,
running back
it's
at
not
that
like
point
they've
as
been
well.
the Bengals or the Browns. They've been around. It's just that...
They've had a couple of down years in between, kind of different eras, but yeah, I think it's still slightly surprising that another unwanted running back has now got the most touchdowns for him.
it is the only part of the Chiefs I still think is really weak.
Yeah,
I mean, Damien Williams I think would be
he's there by default.
a
almost,
fine
isn't he?
backup, but like, yeah, I mean, we're not going to mention Kareem Hunt, but
Anyone want to tell me who the last quarterback to score a rushing touchdown in the Super Bowl was before Mahomes?
Tom Brady.
Sure.
No.
Nick Foles,
No. That
rushing
that was a
touchdown.
pass.
John Elway.
Cam Newton.
Any other takers? I'm going to leave you till the second half before I tell you, but I'm just
Aaron
wondering.
Rodgers.
No, I don't think it was Aaron Rodgers. Keep going. I mean, just have
Hang
a think. We'll come up with it in the second half. But
Bob Greasy.
it's been a while.
Not Bob Greasy.
It's not Bob. It's not Bob Greasy, but I love that you.
Jim Plunkett.
Again, it's not Jim Plunkett.
Dale LaMonica.
Kurt Schwarmer.
Who?
Dale LaMonica.
Daryl LaMonica. Dale LaMonica.
I'll call him whatever the hell I want.
Roger Starbuck.
He's not listening. Okay, well, I'll let you know in the second half of the show. That's fine. Just wondered if anybody would know off the top of
Trent Dilfer.
It's definitely not Trent Dilfer.
Okay.
Well, we'll go to end the first half now with a message from a podcast friend of ours.
Do you love NFL football, fun, and booze? Join us at Thirst and Goal Podcast every Saturday night for weekly NFL coverage, whiskey, bourbon, scotch, and beer reviews. We mix expert football analysis with signature drinks, original segments, and lots of laughs.
That's right, football fans. Please join us at Thirst and Goal Podcast by heading over to thirstandgoal.buzzsprout.com or search Thirst and Goal Podcast on the web. If you're tired of boring podcasts, please come join our football party.
Anyway, any last?
One last point on the Super Bowl. We've spoken a lot about why the 49ers lost. Was it down to Kyle Shanahan? Was it down to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid? Was it down to a bad defense? No, I can tell you. The reason why the 49ers lost the Super Bowl was because our friend Gary has Twitter. And
It's true.
It is true.
It's true.
And right when the 49ers were 10 points up,
At a 95.3% win probability.
Gary tweets, wow, just wow, nearly starting to believe, #Super Bowl.
#fail.
So
Who does
Gary,
that?
next time the 49ers are in the Super Bowl, we're confiscating your phone, your iPad, any ability you have to make a connection to the outside world, and Paul's going to gag you.
Nothing new there then.
Yeah.
Just a standard podcast like that. Right,
I
moving
would
on.
say
Go on.
He made a lovely chili this week.
Oh, he did
a
make a lovely chili.
Yeah,
And I have to say-
that was good.
Some of
Thank
us
you.
got to taste it several times.
And thank you for hosting.
Thank you. And as well, the key lime pie was delicious.
Yeah.
That was
Creamy.
magnificent.
It
So
was
Yeah.
creamy.
enjoyed it so
Creamy.
much I had it twice.
Yeah, wonderful. Moving on. It's awards time, gentlemen. Roll up for the Snap UK 2019 Season Awards.
The snappies.
The Snappies, absolutely.
For legal reasons, I can't call them the Snappy Snaps.
No, you cannot call them the Snappy Snaps, even if you took pictures of them. We are going to start by naming our offensive and defensive rookies of the year in a roundtable format, starting with you, Jim.
Hang on, which offensive rookie?
Offensive rookie first. Yeah.
Josh Jacobs.
John?
A.G. Brown.
Paul?
I'm disgusted. I'm going to have to agree with my brother, AJ Brown.
And I went with Josh Jacobs. So that's 2 and 2. We'll have a look and see what
Was there a
Gary said.
tiebreaker from Gary?
Would you like to justify Josh Jacobs for me?
I think he came into a team which didn't really have a running game at all, and he created one. I think he's one of the first 1,000-yard rushes the Raiders have had for a number of years.
4 years, I think.
Yep. And he made the Raiders look good. I think he's a shoo-in to be a top 10 fantasy pick next year.
Gary doesn't help us at all. He picked Kyler Murray.
Well, he's just wrong, isn't he?
Kyler Murray did win the offensive.
He won the
rookie of the year.
but this is another thing of quarterbacks.
Paul, do you
being
want
up
to
here.
justify AJ Brown?
I just think he was exciting. Much like Josh Jacobs, he brought excitement into a very dull team.
Yeah, he certainly was the standout, exciting player on that team in terms of receiving. But
also, he also helped that team because it gave Ryan Tannehill an option, which, you know how well he did in the past with Devontae Parker. Quick, dynamic receiver, and I think AJ Brown's a quick, dynamic receiver.
Josh Jacobs, through injury, I think tailed off as the season went on.
I'd say AJ Brown started very slowly.
And AJ Brown started very slowly. But let's not forget who had a quarterback.
That's true.
And then got better and
So how do we
his
resolve
final
this dispute?
one.
We cannot have a tie.
AJ Brown got to the playoffs. Josh Jacobs didn't.
I am willing to concede on that point.
Yeah,
But
I've lost so much this weekend.
I
I'm
like-
just-
I'm willing to concede to Josh Jacobs because
That doesn't help either.
Stop,
Because
stop
what
being
I'm-
so. We're not going to be British about it. AJ Brown.
Okay,
AJ Brown.
Yeah,
We'll
fine.
go with AJ Brown. So, defensive rookie of the season. I will tell you now that if you haven't said this, you're wrong. Gary and I have both gone for Bosa.
Bosa.
Okay, that was easy enough. I thought that might be a clean sweep there, so we can move on very quickly from that one. Right. I would like your season's offensive player of the season.
Are we looking at the entire 2019 season?
You are only looking at regular season. I do not wish to include the postseason.
Offensive player of the year,
Yep.
Michael Thomas.
John?
Derrick Henry.
Jim?
Christian McCaffrey.
I also picked Christian McCaffrey. Well, we'll see what Gary's picked.
All excellent picks, though.
They are. Gary has also picked Christian McCaffrey.
I was going to pick Christian McCaffrey, but I included the playoffs where
Okay.
Derrick Henry just
Derrick
went
Henry was
to
amazing.
another
Had
level.
we included the playoffs, I would have absolutely gone with Derrick Henry. But I believe the cutoff was the discussion was had the other day. It should be regular season or not.
I also think Christian
Christian
McCaffrey was pretty much the whole of the Panthers' offense.
and he was quarterback proof.
Yeah.
because he played with 3 different quarterbacks this season.
So did Michael Thomas, and he got the most receptions ever.
But he's also the only player they throw the ball to. The only player they throw the ball to.
Same with McCaffrey.
No,
Yeah.
but the other wide receiver is
A very good point.
Ted Ginn.
I think. All right.
I was
he's-
because Michael Thomas did win the award, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And
He
I
did.
was astounded because I don't
I'm
think
not.
he was.
I'm not.
because he broke a record.
He broke a record, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't feel it. I thought McCaffrey was a
This is what the
shoo-in.
NFL's all about. If you break a record, you're getting an award.
But McCaffrey broke the record for the most combined rushing and receiving
But yeah,
touchdowns.
that's too complicated for him.
I see.
Michael Thomas was reliability. McCaffrey wasn't there every single game. Michael Thomas was.
What other wide receivers have won that award?
That award.
Jerry Rice.
Jerry Rice twice. That's it.
That's it.
That is
I
it.
did not know that. Julio's never won that award.
Nope.
no? Wow, I would never have guessed that. No, I suppose it normally ends up being a running back or a quarterback.
So we're going for my pick then, yeah?
No, we're not,
All
because
right.
it was a clear win for Christian McCaffrey.
They're
in
all
the
great.
Snappies.
They're all great players.
Right, anyone
But
we mentioned
McCaffrey.
this part of the
You
show
would
is
like
good
to
big-
think we've not been that stupid.
Yeah.
Defensive player of the season, I will go first this time. I picked Gilmore. I thought he was by far and away the best player on the best defense, and the only reason really that New England were in the playoffs.
I also went with Gilmore.
You can't do anything other than go with Gilmore.
I believe Gary went with Gilmore.
I went with Gilmore for exactly the same
Another
reason.
clean
Wow.
sweep.
Let's be fair. The only thing that got New England to the playoffs was their defense.
Honourable mention for Shaq Barrett, who came out of nowhere to have like 19 sacks.
It was a ridiculous number of sacks.
Yeah.
Was it
I
19
think
in
it
the
was
end?
19 and a half.
Oh, I didn't think it
sacks.
was that many, but still. Yes, he was next up on my list. I thought he was brilliant too.
I mean, Aaron Donald continues to be brilliant. He's just in a bad team right
But
now.
the problem was he wasn't as brilliant as last season.
Yeah, he set a very high benchmark.
Yeah.
Do you not remember when Ndamukong Suh did this? Had like one amazing season, and everyone spent 3 years going, well, he hasn't lived up to that. And he was still getting like 11 sacks a season. And you're like, you cannot get 20 sacks a year. You can't do
Not-
that.
especially for a defensive tackle. Maybe
just-
at the end, but
Yeah.
A guy with 12.5 sacks, 20 tackles for loss. Yeah, he was rubbish this
Yeah.
season.
Well, that's what I mean. Like,
Who would-
you
who
try
wouldn't
facing
want
him.
that?
That's like when we were all saying about Jimmy G closing his eyes when he got tackled at the weekend. we were like, yeah, I'd have closed my eyes and run the other way, clutching the ball for all I was worth, then throwing it into the crowd. Stop.
my uniform wouldn't be white.
You would be the Browns.
Can I also, as a notable, can we also mention Tyrann Mathieu at the Chiefs, who's been transformative to a previously hokey defence?
Yeah, there was a guy there who last season said, I don't want to stay on the Texans, I want to go and be paid to play for a Super Bowl contender, and made that defence a Super Bowl contender. Because we said earlier, that defence did not play that well at any point last season. And he was unmentioned, really, in the Super Bowl. But there was so little running room through the middle, and a lot of that was down to the fact he was coming up into the box and stuffing the running backs. Are you giggling at coming up into the box?
I am, yes.
Just checking. You've done well to get through all the sack talk. Well done. Well done, you. Right. I will have your MVP of the regular season, if I may. John.
I thought long and hard about this, and I just went with Russell Wilson because he was brilliant.
Paul?
Lamar Jackson.
Jim?
Lamar Jackson.
Gary went Lamar Jackson, and I also went Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
I'm disgusted. Your lack of...
I was disgusted with myself that after I wrote Lamar Jackson down, I didn't put Russell Wilson.
But
I liked Russell. I had Lamar Jackson in my fantasy team. Every fantasy team I had.
You had fantasies about him.
He was great. As well, for him to be the first unanimous MVP, second unanimous MVP, the only other one was Brady. I just think
you just wanted to be different, didn't you?
Well, no, but I just think was he that good to be a unanimous MVP? No one thought Christian McCaffrey got 2,000 yards.
I know this is off topic, but I was discussing with Duncan. Did anyone see that in the Hall of Fame voting for the baseball, Derek Jeter was not unanimous because one guy didn't vote for him and has refused to reveal who he is? And you're like, you've just done that to be a dick.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you've done the same thing, but I just that blew. I don't know a lot about baseball. That blew me away. I wasn't at all surprised that Lamar Jackson was MVP, but I was surprised it was unanimous. I have to agree.
Just look at the stats, John. Look at the stats. I'm not gonna let you talk. All right. Two things.
Not talking, looking.
Who sold the most shirts? I'm not gonna let you talk. It's Lamar Jackson. 3,127 passing yards, 36 touchdowns. That's passing. 7 rushing touchdowns, 1,206 yards, 7 yards rushing average. That's a phenomenal season.
Phenomenal.
It's a very good season.
He is great.
And what did Russell Wilson do?
Almost the same. Not quite. Didn't have quite as many rushing touchdowns, I think. But look, he was still... it was a brilliant... Because I tell you why Russell Wilson... And John is correct here. Russell Wilson did as much, more or less, with less.
Well, he was... I mentioned that Christian McCaffrey was the Panthers off offense.
Russell Wilson has for 2 years been...
probably for more, actually. And with a very wonky offensive line in front of him for the last 5 years.
Wonky or shonky?
Both.
Okay. So our MVP on the Snappies is Lamar Jackson.
Russell Wilson got 4,110 yards, 31 touchdowns,
less than Jackson,
only 5 interceptions.
Yeah, that's an incredible season.
But how many running yards?
He was the only person to push Lamar Jackson for regular season MVP.
Yeah.
So Mahomes, by the way, only missed out here because he missed 3 or 4 games.
Yeah. And he wasn't the best when he came back from those 3 or 4 games either.
You were saying earlier about those little things that could have won the Niners the Super Bowl. The leg of Patrick Mahomes could have been broken.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. And that is why they've won the Super Bowl. Because
genetics.
Well, pretty much. He bent rather than broke.
A couple of centimetres.
And also Matt Moore deserves a mention. My boy Matt Moore, because he's now
Super Bowl winning
quarterback Matt Moore. Just saying, my boy there, just for Gary.
The CJ Anderson of quarterbacks.
I would like your nominees for Coach of the Season.
I'm going to come in first, and I'm going to be very specific because I've given this some thought. And when I tried to explain it to John earlier, he weren't buying it. So I'm going to explain it to you and you.
Thanks.
And
my coach of the year of the regular season is Bill Belichick.
Go on.
GM, head coach, defensive coordinator, one of the best teams of the regular season, one of the best defenses.
Yeah.
I think that's a man who's wearing multiple hats.
We saw him at the weekend wearing multiple rings.
Oh, by the way, he was getting booed when he walked out on the pitch, and he just stood there and held his two hands up, and you're like, yeah, you can't argue with that. Like, even I thought that's a proper Patriots move, but you can't argue with it. Somebody pointed out he only had 3 rings on. Which of the 9 rings he's won did he go out there and flash? Because which ones do you pick? The biggest ones?
One of them was massive.
It was enormous.
Most of them are massive these days, anyway.
What other coach did that? And you can give it the sentimental Andy Reid because the Walrus won a ring. Yay.
Cuckoo.
But what coach did more than Belichick?
I'm pretty sure that you're the only one that's going to name Bill Belichick as Coach of the Year here.
I'm also fairly sure you're the only one, but I feel it's an argument well put across.
It is a good argument. Because I've never thought of it that way, but yeah, that's a great
because that
argument.
defense, we have forgotten that for 11 weeks that defense was incredible.
Week 8, they'd have won 50% of their games without taking an offensive snap.
Yes, because they scored so many points on defense. John, who would you like to nominate?
Now, I put a lot of thought into this. Mike Tomlin.
Oh, that's a good shout again. I'll be surprised if Jim hasn't had serious thoughts about Mike Tomlin because I know he felt it was going.
And he's thought about the Coach of the Year as well.
I know he's missed out on the playoffs for the second year in a row. But he's done it with... He's almost got into the playoffs with two of the shonkiest quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life.
One man called Duck.
Duck Hedges.
Hodges. Duck Hedges. Yes. Yes, forever he will be known as Duck Hedges.
But Duck Hodges, like...
Who was the other fella?
Mason Rudolph.
Mason Rudolph.
Who was awful.
The best thing about... The most notable thing Mason Rudolph did this year was get smashed in the head by Myles Garrett. Everything else was totally forgettable.
Mason Rudolph is the rich man's Christian Hackenberg.
I mean...
that's the level he's in. Mason Rudolph is a terrible quarterback. I actually thought Devlin Hodges was a better quarterback.
Oh, he was.
He was, but
he still wasn't great.
No.
And they still didn't deserve to win. Did they win 8 games in the end? Did they go 8-8 or 7-9?
Maybe 7-9.
I think
7-9.
Either way, yeah. I think that's a brilliant nomination. But it comes from the same place as the Belichick nomination in that they didn't have a lot to work with and did a really great job.
He didn't have Smith-Schuster. He'd already lost
Connor got
Brown.
injured.
Connor was injured throughout the league. You know,
it's a great nomination.
I think we have been guilty of underestimating how much of an effect. As well, who knew how much of an absolute twat Antonio Brown was until this season?
Also, Bell as well.
When he lost.
And Ben's hardly easy to manage.
Being managed by Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fair point, well made. Jim?
Tomlin was my second choice.
Yeah.
Brian Flores was my third choice because I think he had in Miami was to win any games is absolutely incredible.
He just had Fitzmagic and nothing. Oh, Devontae Parker.
Yeah.
There you go.
But I had to be a bit of a homer and go with Kyle Shanahan.
You are a massive homer.
He's taken a team from 2-14 to 13-3 and then all the way to the Super Bowl.
Which he lost.
But he did it.
I will tell you now that Kyle Shanahan's going to win this because Gary also has been a homer and selected him. I
don't think you should be allowed to pick the head coach of your own team. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I mean, I wouldn't have done that because that's just a cheap move, isn't it? But I will say now I was most massively impressed with the balls of Mike Vrabel to basically ditch the franchise quarterback for Tannehill
Vrabel's a good
after
shout as well.
4 games and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this running game. We're going to the playoffs. And... they had an incredible season, and he basically offered his penis for a Super Bowl. I seem to remember he offered to cut it off.
I think we've proved here there are a lot of
excellent coaches.
Excellent choices, and then the NFL Coach of the Year was John Harbaugh.
Yeah, and that is the one I really couldn't get on board with. I
see where they're coming from because he won a lot of games, but yeah, I think all the people we've mentioned would be above him.
I would like to think so.
I've got a question to ask you because I don't know it. I don't know the answer. If Rosen, Allen, Darnold or Mayfield were still on the board, would Lamar Jackson have gone to the Ravens?
Probably not, no.
No, I don't think so either.
They did trade back into the first to get him. They didn't even pick him with their first round pick.
No.
they have transformed. He has transformed that offense around their.
Yeah, I almost feel
because he had to.
Yeah, he had to. I almost feel that they ended last season, figured out what Lamar Jackson would be good at, and gone right. Well, let's go that way, and that's what they should do.
He certainly deserves some credit.
Yeah.
But like we said, all the people we've nominated at this table, I think, are better shouts than John Harbaugh.
Yeah,
I went for the best coach of all time.
You did, but you did put a lot of thought into it, and probably some research. So well done.
So well done, Kyle Shanahan.
Yes.
We'll. I think there's one that we can get out of the way fairly early here, and then we've got a couple more fairly serious awards. I say serious. This is us. Shall we get the biggest knobhead of the year award out of the way? If this isn't unanimous, I will be disappointed. I feel he's already had a mention this evening. I am nominating Antonio Brown.
seconded.
Thirded.
Paul's racking his brains for someone else just because he wants to. This is the Jeter moment for Paul.
We have some honourable mentions.
Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield.
For being a bit of a dick all through the season.
Freddie Kitchens for being for that T-shirt.
Gary actually has blown the unanimity. No, yeah, no. Yeah, he's blown the unanimousness of this decision by nominating Myles Garrett for the.
Myles Garrett is a good shout as well.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah.
He literally took off his helmet. No, took off someone else's helmet and
beat
battered a
him
man
round
around the head with it.
Yeah.
That's pretty knobheadish.
Yes.
Paul, you still haven't had your say. You're looking something up and you haven't researched this at all, have you?
No, I had his name.
Go on.
But I couldn't. I didn't have it.
Do you want the guy?
You're mumbling.
Mark Walton.
Oh, the running back for the Dolphins,
He's
who won the running back job and then beat up his girlfriend and got sacked from the running back job.
Yes.
Let's not forget that Ryan Fitzpatrick led that team in rushing with 246 yards. Yeah.
Mark Walton did a good job, then decided to celebrate by beating the living tar out of his wife.
Anyone who does that deserves to never play.
It's a noble mention, I guess.
I suppose what you're saying is he gets the Ray Rice Award. I mean, it's harsh. Right.
Double check.
Moving on from that, I think it's Antonio Brown,
It's
but
Antonio
then
Brown.
Myles Garrett is a close second.
Well, I think the running back who beat his wife.
That's a separate award. The Ray Rice Award is an entirely.
I think you'll find Tyreek Hill's in that contest.
Yeah, he
as
should.
well.
Yes.
Now he's got a ring.
I would like your most disappointing player of the season.
I'm going to give you a controversial one.
Andrew
Luck.
I mean, he wasn't actually a player this season.
He was a player in the NFL at the start of the season.
I'm going to let the nomination stand.
Technically, he was still rostered in pre-season.
And his rights are still owned by the Colts. I will let the nomination stand.
I appreciate he was banged up and everything else, but the Colts look like they're on the way to something great.
He was in prison. You said he was banged up.
Oh, yeah, he was banged up at injuries.
That's the sense of the word, man.
He had injuries. The Colts looked like they were going somewhere.
Yep.
And then I say it's disappointing for the point he retired at and what he left the Colts with.
Wasn't it with one
that's more of a
pre-season game to
biggest
go?
knobhead type award, isn't it?
I mean, but there were so many that you couldn't put him in knobhead.
I think it's a controversial selection, but I think it's a well thought through idea. Jim, who would you like to nominate?
Can I guess Jim's?
Go on.
Because based on fantasy performance and the amount of times
he's gone with Alvin Kamara.
He's gone with Alvin Kamara.
I've gone with Alvin Kamara.
Can't think why.
I mean, talk about dropping off a cliff in terms of performance.
How many touchdowns did he get this year in the end? 2?
2. Well, no, he had 2 during the fantasy league and then scored another 4 once the fantasy season.
Where
was
did you
over.
draft him?
Second.
But you're not bitter.
It was a choice between him and Christian McCaffrey.
Oh wow, yeah, you
chose poorly.
Actually, going back, can we just mention? We haven't mentioned Sean Payton in Coach of the Year, and he got his team to 13-3 and got into the playoffs so easy. And
also had 5 games without his leading
LeBron.
quarterback.
That is true.
But he still did have a first-round quarterback.
And Matt LaFleur as well got his team to 13-3.
Both would have been better nominations than John Harbaugh.
Yeah.
NFL, you got this one wrong. John, who would you like to nominate as your most disappointing player of the season?
Now, you start the season on the hot seat, your last 4 games, and you are replaced by a guy who Miami threw out.
Is this Marcus Mariota?
Marcus Mariota, to me, is the most disappointing player. He's going to end up as a backup somewhere on a prove-it deal when he's a second.
Next season's Tannehill.
He could be, or he could be
next season's Bortles.
He could be the new RG3.
Blake
You know,
Bortles is a free agent next year.
That's a good shout, John. I like it.
I
Third
think
overall pick, Blake Bortles.
I think it's been going into the toilet for a few years, but
I don't think it ever got out of the rim of the toilet, did it?
well, no, even in his end of his second year, you thought, he could still be a player. And no,
I mean, I can't let that one go. Jim's just nominated Mariota for a rim job. Is that what you just whispered to me? just check it.
But yeah, he's gone
Thank
from
you.
the second pick in the draft to gone, and no one's going to miss him.
I think that's a great shout. I have nominated Jared Goff
He was my second
for
pick.
his phenomenal drop in stats. 22 touchdowns is good, but 16 interceptions, a massive drop off in wins. The fact that they didn't bench him is only because his backup was Blake Bortles. He was poor this season.
I totally disagree on that.
Really? With the weapons he's got in that team.
4,638 yards.
And what did they mean?
Bloody hell.
What did they mean to that team?
That's more than I thought it was going to be, though.
But what did it mean?
Winston got 5,000.
It doesn't really mean
Stats
anything. They didn't
mean
win.
nothing.
They didn't win the games. And in terms of actual wins and the stats that matter, the how many times did you score it more than you threw it away, he regressed massively this year.
Most completed passes in a single game.
Great.
It's because they had no running back.
Yeah, but I just there are worse quarterbacks than him.
There are, but I just felt his was the biggest drop off.
How many of them are on over
On the
35
Rams.
million? Which he is.
Speaking of the Rams, Gary nominated Todd Gurley,
Yeah,
which
That's
I
a
think
fair-
is
very
a
good
very
shout.
fair shout.
Although I think that's more down to the management of Todd Gurley rather than Todd Gurley himself.
Yeah. So, I mean, we need to... we've not nominated any joint efforts there, so we need to find some contrition. I am happy to concede to Marcus Mariota.
I will. Yours is fantasy spite.
Yes.
So
He's now on the shit list of players I will never, ever, ever draft again.
next season he's going to have a
That isn't true.
phenomenal season.
That isn't true. If Alvin Kamara fell to the second round next season and
I'd
you had
probably
to
still
pick,
draft him.
you'd be like, he's having a comeback.
I don't know. I don't know.
Really?
Do you want to know who I picked in the second round?
Go on.
Odell Beckham.
How did you do in the fantasy?
Came last.
It's the first time I've ever heard him say that.
Can I just point out I picked Derek Henry in the third round.
Oh, you did so well. Okay, so I'm happy to second Mariota. Is anybody else happy to
Mariota's-
jump on board with that?
Mariota's fine. I've got no issue with that.
We'll go with Marcus Mariota. Right. Most disappointing team.
We've just said them.
Have we?
Rams.
Rams. I went with
I
Rams.
went with Browns.
Oh, that's a good shout.
All the hype in that
Yeah,
pre-season.
but it was just hype. It wasn't actual expectation.
A team that's
all that hype
historically
and expectation.
a team that's
Just
shite
hype.
continues to be shite.
Yeah, I have to agree with Paul here.
Hang on, they were in a division with the Bengals, who were terrible.
Yeah, the Bengals are terrible.
Steelers weren't really great.
No.
They had the coach of the year.
They had a great coach. Don't get me wrong, and
And the Ravens.
the Ravens, who
Yeah.
they beat the Ravens.
Yes, they did.
And they were terrible. All those star players, and they could barely.
But it was
get
just
the
a
ball to
fantasy.
Beckham.
It was never actual expect. None of us expected them to do that well.
We all said they would do all right. We all said they'd be making a playoff run at
We
least.
said they could be pushing. None of us actually thought they were
and
getting it.
a lot of other commentators were talking about Super Bowl
Yes,
chances.
they were.
But that was a man who looked like he could. I'm not going to say anything negative. He was a bad head coach.
Oh, he was a
with
terrible head coach.
revolving door O line.
But I thought with the amount of talent they had on that team, you could have put John in charge of the Browns, and they probably would have done better than they should have done.
That is harsh on John.
He's a great manager.
I'm rubbish. But
But you would have done a better job in charge of the Browns.
Have you seen his Madden teams?
I have seen his Valentine's.
I am saying if I was paying Odell Beckham what I was paying Odell Beckham, I'd throw the ball more at him.
Yeah, there is that.
I also wouldn't hire Kareem Hunt, who is
A massive hunt
He is Cockney whamming slang
for himself.
Yeah.
A bit like James Blunt.
It did seem a bit weird when you've got Nick Chubb.
Sorry?
When you've got Nick Chubb,
Yeah.
why do you need Kareem Hunt?
because he's cheap.
He was cheap.
He was cheap. I mean, it's fair. And he did have a couple of good games. John, who would you nominate?
Cleveland Browns.
Cleveland Browns. So 2 and 2 here. I'll have to go to Gary for the tiebreaker, and I can't think what he put now because I put my phone down with his name on it. Most disappointing team. This doesn't help at all. He's put Browns/Rams.
So 2.5 each.
The Brown Rams are the
I would like to extend this to you, John. I conceded very quickly on the Mariota point. I would like you to concede to the Rams because the expectation was genuine rather than fantasy.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I will to go from the Super Bowl to that.
I think that's a nice compromise to reach, and we've not had a fight about quarterbacks this week, so we're doing very well. Right, we're getting towards the end of this. Favourite moment of the season, Jim?
George Kittle running 20 yards with about 4 players attached to his face mask.
That was a great moment. I thought you were going to just pick Gary tweeting.
That was my low point.
Yes, the George Kittle run with 4 players clinging to his head was pretty good. Paul?
Come back to me.
You had all day. John?
Now,
also looking this up.
No, I'm trying to find the video.
Doesn't really mean much on
Well,
a podcast.
But if I say BJ Finney to you, it doesn't mean much, does it?
It does not, no.
BJ Finney is currently a free agent. He was at the end of the season the centre for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, I know what you were going to say.
Is he the guy that kicked Myles Garrett on the head?
No, that was Marquise Pouncey, which of course meant the Steelers needed a new centre. Now, they picked BJ Finney. His
claim to fame?
Claim to fame, I guess. Oops,
Oh, you've grifted it up by putting something on with sound.
I have. Now, if you were gonna describe
the moment
the worst snap of the year, it would be this, where here's BJ Finney.
This is going really
for a start, by the way, his name is BJ, which is always funny.
Now, watch this snap.
Everyone, on the podcast. We're going to have to put this out on Twitter.
We are going to put this out on Twitter.
John, just give us commentary.
He forgets. He doesn't snap the ball, but everyone else reacts, leaving just a fat man holding a football.
It was a great moment.
But the thing is, it's a penalty to the Steelers because
he didn't snap
but it's
the ball.
not him that it gets the penalty.
Four New England players claim to have jumped offside. It's shonky as hell. God, give that man.
It made you laugh.
Made me laugh a lot.
I'd say it's an early contention for the winner here. Paul, have you finally found one?
I wanted to give you the exact numbers.
Go on.
My moment of the season was Winston getting the interception record.
30 interceptions with his last throw of the season.
I feel just for a man who has a section on his Wikipedia page of controversies, one of them just being vulgar comments.
Before you race ahead with this, I would like to point out that this does win because I have picked the same moment. Okay. As John and I sat there and I said, this is Winston's last pass of the year, you know it's getting picked.
It's the fact they gave us overtime for him to get it.
Yeah, and it was claimed out of the air and he looked crestfallen and we were like, how are you the only guy who didn't see this happening? We all knew this was coming. And then afterwards, what was the comment that Bruce Arians made? They said, can you win with another quarterback? And he said, if we can win with this one, we can win with any quarterback. And you're like, oh,
yeah.
But yes, you are quite right. So it was 30 and 30. 34 touchdowns did he get this year?
33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions.
And 6 pick sixes or 7 pick sixes, I believe.
He also has the most fumbles for any person in their first
5 seasons.
Yeah.
For most fumbles, and I think he now has he's in the top 10 for most pick sixes already.
Danny Dimes is hurtling towards that fumble record.
But
he'll do it in 2 years.
Winston's turnovers are phenomenal. How he wins any games, I do not know, but I also picked the same moment. Gary texted me a moment that I'd forgotten, but it is a good one, so it deserves a mention. It was the Dolphins having the first ever punter shovel pass to a kicker for a touchdown.
Yeah, that was a good moment.
And I hadn't remembered it, but it was Gary's choice, and I thought it was very good. It was I can't think what the name of the punter was. It's Hawk, isn't it? But it's spelt funny, and the kicker is Jason Sanders. Hawk, that's him. Yes, and it was a great moment, and one of the Dolphins' best moments of the season by far.
Yeah, I forgot that one. But otherwise, I'd probably
the Winston pick for the final pass of the game and season.
I'm glad I didn't pick it because I want Winston to win now.
Well, he does.
That time he won something.
Well, yeah, that's very true. I believe that brings the awards to a close, unless anyone has got any of their own they would like to add. Anybody at all?
I don't.
No.
I think we've covered it.
I think moment of the season, you still have to bring in the Myles Garrett, the Mason Rudolph helmet attack, because it's one of those things where you saw the words and it couldn't put into justice the video in any way, shape, or form.
But I'd like to bring up whoever it was who said who was the centre who kicked him in the head, because Pouncey running in and doing that was brilliant.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm going to join in with this. He couldn't wait to get there. I've never seen Pouncey move that fast. He's like, there's a kicking going on and I'm not involved.
Vernon Davis retired on Sunday.
Yeah.
He retired because of the shame of when he tried to jump over,
When he tried to hurdle someone.
and the bloke just went and stepped
Stood
back and instantly tackled him.
I will not have anybody shame Vernon Davis, since Vernon Davis in Madden 2012 at the 49ers is still someone I love.
He's still a player. As a 49ers fan, he's a player that, even when he left the 49ers, you were a little bit gutted, but you carried on supporting him because he was such a good player for us.
And he's been brilliant, and the league will miss him.
Yes,
He left better than his brother as well.
Yeah. Vontae Davis, who
I left halfway through
retired
a
at
game.
half time.
Oh,
yeah.
God,
Yes, he
yeah.
did. He left halfway through a
Yeah.
game. That was an amazing. Was he with the Bills?
Yes,
that's
and he
right.
just quit on his team. Well done him. Right, Jim is going to lead us off towards the end of the show with his top 5 questions for the upcoming off season.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of storylines. Now, there's nothing for NFL writers to write about apart from the draft, free agency,
And how crap Jimmy G is.
and how crap Jimmy G and Kyle Shanahan are. So, top 5 questions I have heading into the off season: where are all these various free agent quarterbacks going to end up? So here's a list of quarterbacks that are impending free agents: Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Teddy Bridgewater, Marcus Mariota, Phillip Rivers, Jameis Winston, Ryan Tannehill, Dak Prescott, Taysom Hill, and the one and only Nate Peterman.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's a free agent.
He's going to be staying at the Raiders.
Probably.
I am fairly confident. And he's
But,
going to be
yeah,
backing
I
up
mean-
Tom Brady.
I'm not saying we should answer all.
No,
of
no,
those,
absolutely.
But there's going to, there's also 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the draft. That's a list of 8 or 9 quarterbacks there. That's 15
You would say
quarterbacks. that-
Probably 2 or 3 of them are retiring, right? And if they're not, they should be.
One.
There's 3 that I guess could retire in terms of Brees, Brady, and Phillip Rivers, but they all seem. I think they're all edging towards carrying on playing.
But I do like that the Chargers have made it very clear that they don't want Rivers.
They don't want Rivers. They're going to draft someone else. They've got Tyrod Taylor, who is good enough to cover for a year while someone else learns the ropes. I mean, Tyrod Taylor's not going to be any worse than Phillip Rivers just was.
No.
True.
And he can walk.
Drew Brees, I think.
Unlike
will
Phillip
stay.
Rivers' wife,
Well, absolutely.
who's still recovering from a multiple shattered pelvises, I imagine.
I could see the Saints keeping all 3 of those quarterbacks
Yeah.
for some strange reason. I think they'll manage to keep Brees, Bridgewater, and Taysom Hill somehow.
I think Bridgewater's going to be somewhere else. I think he wants to start now. After the performances he put in, I think he's going to want to start.
They were good, but I wouldn't say they were brilliant.
No, they weren't. They didn't set the world on fire, but
Is Jameis Winston a free agent quarterback?
Yes, he is.
this is what I was saying earlier in the season. You give Bruce Arians Andy Dalton. Was Andy Dalton on your list, by the way?
No.
He's being released.
Well, there you go. There's another one.
So Andy Dalton, you put him in that Tampa Bay team. He doesn't
I
throw
mean,
30
I
interceptions.
also
Yeah,
left
but-
off Colt McCoy.
Colt McCoy. Oh,
He's going to be a free agent.
Everybody's forgetting one.
XFL.
Chad Henne.
Everybody's forgetting one very important part of Andy Dalton moving to Florida.
the sun.
He's ginger, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's not a great idea.
Question 2.
Question 2, what are the Dallas Cowboys going to do about their impending free agents? We mentioned Dak Prescott, but they've also got Amari Cooper and Byron Jones, a cornerback. Those are 3 pretty big checks they might have to sign. I mean, they should have got one of them done.
They're going to franchise Dak, I think.
So
As for
it's
the rest,
expensive to franchise a quarterback. And then what do? Do you then franchise him again next year? Because what's the franchise tag going to be? Like 26 million and plus
27, I
12?
think, yeah.
But doesn't Dak already turn down 30?
Yes.
So it actually isn't as expensive
as
to
trying to pay him.
to franchise tag him than it is to pay him. And I
But
feel
do you
for
want,
Dak.
Do you want to go from season to season like Kirk Cousins did in Washington, where okay, he's going to get 26 million this year, but then you need to add on another 20% of their franchise tag him again, And then we're not even going to talk about the third year, but
Yeah.
But he hasn't done enough.
See, but
But who
compared
else
to
are
the
they
other
gonna
ones,
Someone else.
Dak was a 4th round pick. So he's not been, Mahomes in his 4th year is a first round pick. He'll be on 9 million or something by the end of his fifth year. Dak's on 800 grand. He's been a first team starter since he joined, and they've paid 2.4 million for him.
I think John's right, and I think they've got to pay him because I just don't. Who are they going to replace him with? They've not got a high enough draft pick to get one of the best 3 or 4 quarterbacks, and the list of players that Jim's just named, you can't tell me guaranteed that they're going to sign someone who's definitely going to be better than Dak off that list.
Ryan Tannehill.
Guaranteed he's going to be better than Dak.
Not guaranteed.
out of that list, out of the other free agents, I'd be taking Dak Prescott.
Yeah, as would I.
I've never been his
I
biggest
think
fan.
they're going to have to pay him. Yeah, I haven't, and he only has 8 to 10 good games a season.
Yeah,
but who do you replace him with? It's been a great transition from Romo to him. They've kept going.
Out of that list of 3, I think they have to pay 2 of them, Dak and Amari Cooper. And I think they'll let Byron Jones
I'm
go.
not sure Amari Cooper's going to get paid. I think it might be Byron Jones.
I think they've got Zeke. That's the important thing.
Yeah, and that is the important thing. Question 3.
Question 3, will Cam Newton be the Panthers starter in week 1?
No. I'm not going to tell you who is, but not him.
I think there's more chance now they've changed coach than there was before. I'm not in favour of it because I think he might be done and he's just another injury waiting to happen. But now they've lost Kuechly as well, which is another leader. They need some continuity. They're not a terrible team. They need something.
Cam on his day is still a good quarterback.
Yes, he is.
It's just that he's been injured for the last 2 years.
John?
Do you want continuity on a team that has had 2, 3 losing seasons?
I don't know.
Or do you just think I'm
again.
new in? Let's
Decent.
burn this to the. I've lost my defensive
They got a
linchpin.
fairly high draft pick. I think they're 8th or 9th in the first round.
They could get a quarterback.
Package that up, you might be able to jump up a few places to kind of over the Chargers.
It's also a great landing spot for a couple of those free agents.
Exactly.
Teddy Bridgewater at the Panthers. I think that'd be all right.
Yeah.
I mean, you've lost Kuechly, you've lost Greg Olsen.
Yeah, Greg Olsen, yeah.
Another one they've let go. Yeah.
As well, if you've lost Greg Olsen, what is the point of Cam? If you're not going to run Cam and you're not going to let him throw it to Greg Olsen, then what is the fucking point? No offense.
Yeah.
And
that's very fair.
You could save 20-something million if on cap space you'd have 60 million quid.
Until about week 11 or week 12, I thought Kyle Allen was the future there, and then he fell off a cliff massively towards the end of the season and was replaced by Will Greer for the last
Who
week.
was just as bad.
Who was worse.
Who, if you remember very rightly,
Yeah, we do remember you drafted him, yes.
I drafted him 10th overall
Yeah.
in our mock draft.
Good job.
And that is why you don't have a job in the NFL.
I am what they call retarded.
Well, Chicago Bears traded up to 2nd to draft Mitch Trubisky, so...
Also a terrible call.
Yeah.
Next question.
Next question, will the 2020 season be the dawn of a new age in the AFC East? Obviously, we've seen the Patriots not get to the playoffs, but not being as convincing in the second half of the season. Bills look like a good team. New York Jets, second season under Gase, with Darnold maybe being fitter. They could come again. Dolphins, they're going to be rebuilding with, probably a new quarterback and a new roster. They've got 3 first-round picks and a whole load of second and third-round picks.
There's one more year. I say one more year.
I think it's time to move on from Brady if it means the difference between keeping or losing Belichick. It's all about keeping Belichick. Whatever he wants, he should get. I don't necessarily think that's what's going to happen. But if Belichick is happy, we will continue to win that division. If he is unhappy or he leaves, then we will lose the division to the Bills. I'm not bothered about the other two. The Jets are a walking disaster. It doesn't matter how fit Darnold is. Gase is an awful coach. He's just a bad coach.
So it's between you and the Bills.
Yeah.
Well,
and
Patriots and the Bills, sorry.
and the Dolphins will be better, but they're so far off the
too
pace.
far.
He does it every 10 years. He
Reboots the team.
he reboots the team. That's what
I
Bill
think
Belichick
the
does.
difference is that he's not building around Brady.
He's not building around
He
Brady.
needs to be allowed to let
But-
Brady go.
I'm reading a book at the moment.
Really?
Brady
You
versus
come with
Manning.
crayons. Or
You're reading the book I lent you.
Brady versus Manning.
Oh, it's
and
good.
it's on about the
that.
emergence of Tom Brady. And Belichick has a quarterback he doesn't want. But he doesn't go against Kraft. He just waits for the opportunity to bring in his guy. And if Crafts insists on having Brady, I can see Belichick
will leave.
I don't think he'll leave, but I think he'll just wait to be given the chance.
So what you're saying
is have his guy in. He just needs to find his guy.
we need to bring in a Jets linebacker to shear Tom Brady's blood vessels.
Yes.
I think the problem here is his guy was probably Jimmy G. And I'm not sure Stidham. I mean, I've only seen him throw 2 passes, and one of them was picked off. But I don't think you can tell anything from that. I just don't think. I don't think the guy is on the roster. And I think if Belichick is told you have to keep Brady, I just think he might go. He doesn't want to. What's he got left? 5 years, Belichick? 6 years, maybe. Now in Belichick's head, that's 3 Super Bowls. That's what you're looking at. That's what he's trying to keep up, and that's not with Tom Brady.
I don't think he wants to be out the league though, and that's
No,
what
I don't think he ever.
That was the thing that surprised me the most about a couple of the coaching jobs being filled so fast.
you got to.
The Giants and the Cowboys,
You
for
got
instance,
to. You
because he
can't-
could have gone there.
You can't not hire someone on the proviso that what if Bill
What if we can get Bill one way or another?
and
Good.
if not, you end up with Hugh Jackson or something because you've left it too late.
I'd rather have a steaming pile of dog turd than Pat Shermer for another season.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
Don't worry, you've got Jason Garrett and Freddie Kitchens on your coaching staff.
And I got what I wanted.
Absolutely. Final question.
Final question. 2021 is going to be renewal of the combined bargaining agreement, CBA. And there's already talk about them trying to get it done earlier. And it seems like it's almost there. But the only sticking point is that the NFL want to increase to 17 regular season games. This is going to be one of those stories which is going to be bubbling along for the next 6 months where the players don't want a 17th game. The owners want a 17th game. The NFL seems to want a 17th game. I think you're just going to be hearing a lot about it over the next few months.
Not hearing a question there, Jim.
Well, what's going to happen?
I want them to make the Pro Bowl proper.
No, that's not an
never
answer
gonna
to
happen.
That's the 17th game, isn't it?
that.
Barely.
But it could be
The owners
if it's
tend,
done right.
The owners tend to get what they want, but it's a greedy move because it's just we don't want to pay the players anymore. We just want to pro-rata their money over 17 games. That's not going to fly. And I think that could be where there's a lockout.
Yeah.
I think the owners need to bearing in mind all the concussion work that's gone over the last 3 or 4 years, I think they need to say 16's enough, we're going with that, or the whole of the pre-season schedule
Well,
has got to go.
that's what. Well, I think they won't get rid of all of it because there'll need to be a couple of games to
Just have more scrimmage
I think
time.
they'll lose. I can see them going down to 2 preseason games and reducing the amount of scrimmage time. Because the NFLPA are in a pretty strong position in that they know the NFL and the owners have played their cards. They know what they want, so they can go out there and demand what they want.
I don't want to see less scrimmage time. I
I
think
don't
the
either,
O-line play is appalling, and it has been going downhill since they limited the scrimmage time. So they need to extend that, cut the off-season games, and if they want to put a 17th game in, they need to increase roster sizes and limit each player's season to 16 games. You can only make 16 appearances.
I don't want to watch that though.
The other thing is, what do you do with the 17th game? Do you play it at home or do you play it away? Or
Well, it'll be
is this-
rotating year to year.
Or is this going to be a case of they're just going to pick a whole load of venues internationally and play it? Maybe one in Canada, another one in Mexico.
I don't think it's necessary
Germany,
at all. I just
China.
think it's greed.
It is greedy.
Of
And
course it is, but these are NFL owners.
if you limit the players to 16 games, then it becomes a friendly anyway because no one wants to watch.
Well, you're assuming they're all not going to play the 17th game. They would be like players will miss a game anyway.
But I'm just saying, if you have a game where you don't, if you're paying a guy 35 million quid a year, you ain't going to play your backup O-line in front of him. So suddenly you're playing your backup quarterback, your backup O-line. You're probably not going to play your full-time receivers because why would you have a game where you have your best receivers on the bench where you have your quarterback? It's going to be reserve team. What is the point? I don't want to watch it. So
I think that's the problem. If you limit players to 16 games,
I ain't watching it.
if you're paying $300-400 to go to an NFL game, it's
I agree, but it's the concussion
Matt
thing.
Moore rather
it's
than
the
Pat
concussion
Mahomes.
thing.
The players will simply say, we're just putting ourselves more at risk. You've either got to pay us all a shed load more money for a 17th game,
they
which
could.
kind of knocks the point of it on the head
they
because
could-
the owners won't be making the
But
money. It'll be going straight
they
out.
could
again.
couple it with increasing the salary cap as well, which would free up more money for
But
the
it's
players.
not just increasing the salary cap because that only goes to the top 10% of players. All the players will be saying, we all want more money. You can't just give it to just the quarterbacks and the running backs. It's got to come to the O-line and the D-line.
But then you increase the salary cap by an extra amount and say, right, well, it's up to the owners then to divvy up.
They would have to increase minimum salaries, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do that because the owners have already said, well, we're shelling out all this money. What would be the point of an extra game to bring in money if you've just got to hand it all straight back over? You might as well not bother.
And you ain't going to make the money because fans aren't going to watch it. The TV companies aren't going to want to show it.
Anyway, this is what the discussion is going to be over the next 6 months. I guarantee.
So there are your 5 questions.
They're my 5 questions.
I have one question. Impact of the XFL. What do we think? Minimal? Not interested? Paul?
It's the AAF, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just with smarter ownership.
See,
probably slightly better marketing, which might get it a bit of a peak.
It's come at the right time.
I didn't mind
Football
the AAF.
still in the conscience.
I watched it every week, just the highlight packages on a Monday morning, and I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was a shame it folded, and I think Spring League is required for all these players who don't get a second or third opportunity in the NFL but can still play. I think it would be useful if the NFL looks at it properly and says, right, we can see these 2 guys on this team are better than X, Y, and Z on our team.
But they did that. I mean, they did look at the AAF properly. They allow the AAF highlights to be shown on the NFL.com and games to be shown on the NFL networks.
But the AAF needed support.
They supported it as much as I think they probably could.
They needed financial support.
Yeah,
that was what the NFL drew the line at.
The NFL aren't going to pay for another league.
No, but the XFL doesn't need the financial support. So I wonder if it will be able to sustain itself.
That's it. The impact from the XFL first time was seen in how NFL was presented.
Spider Cam.
The
new kickoff rules are going to be interesting. Things like that, kickoff and punt coverage rules.
The conversion rules are interesting.
Yep.
The way it's 1, 2, or 3 points.
We watched a thing with Oliver Luck, didn't we?
Yeah.
Saying about how they're going to do the point afters and things like that. Watch it. I think it'll be interesting. Some of it will be bad.
The impact this season is going to be negligible. It's 5 years. You might see a switch in how they present it because it's coming from WWE, who are
Masters
really
of production.
really good at production. That is what they are.
Yeah,
amazing
I think
at.
This, if they can get through the first couple of years and they can get their viewing figures and the amount of money coming back in, i.e., not just them spending but actually making money.
Yeah,
because they need to make a splash in terms of signing a recruit out of college who is a big kind of top 10.
like the USFL did.
Like the USFL did with Steve Young.
Jim Kelly,
yeah. They need to make a splash like that before it becomes anything serious. And even when they signed those 2 guys, they didn't get the attendances they wanted.
They didn't. But the only other thing they can do is, and we read something about this at the weekend, try and tempt Andrew Luck to join his dad's league. Now, it would mean buying him out of his Colts contract because he's still there for another 2 years, technically. Or you drag in players...
Only another year on that.
It might be a year now, You drag in players that people want to see that they don't get to see in the NFL. RG3, for instance. People will still watch RG3 if he suddenly was a starter. Now, the problem they've got is they can't afford the salaries. I think quarterbacks are capped at like $500,000.
But that gets you a Johnny Manziel, doesn't it?
Yeah, but who wants to watch him?
They are.
They barred him.
Hang on,
didn't they?
they've barred
because
him.
he's got criminal record.
Yeah,
He's got a criminal record.
And also a good thing, by the way.
Yeah,
They said you've had your second, third, and fourth chance.
Completely agree with that stance. And
Which means as well, Antonio Brown probably can't go there at the moment because he's.
Not bad.
There you go. The salary cap is $4 million per team, so
it's just tiny.
It is
tiny. But they are players asking for a chance. So, but yeah,
it's a prove it league.
Players asking for a chance, and Trent Richardson still didn't get another go.
They used it. And I felt bad for
him.
Yeah,
if you're hoping for Kaepernick,
was he not the lead rusher in the AAF?
Yeah.
Still didn't get into the XFL. It doesn't add up. I mean, all right, his years are well gone. What's that? 8 years since he was drafted, but he was outstanding. The only outstanding player in the AAF. He was by far and away the lead rusher, the lead touchdown scorer.
I remember Quinton Patton having a couple of good games.
He had a couple of good games. Ex-Niners
receivers. I think he might have got a contract in the NFL out of it, but there are only a couple, and Trent Richardson definitely wasn't one of them.
Well, before we finish, I feel like we didn't mention the best part of Sunday night, which was Shakira and J-Lo shaking. It was great, wasn't it?
As halftime shows go, I think they catered for the audience.
I think it was one of the best since The Who, but for completely different reasons.
I have never seen all of us as a group sitting
In
mouths
stunned
agape,
silence.
in stunned silence, watching the halftime show. It's the only time we haven't turned the sound off at halftime.
This is we said, the NFL could increase their production values from learning from WWE. There was a 50-year-old Latino woman on a stripper pole, and I was mesmerised.
I thought we'd switched over to Babe Station by mistake. It was quite something.
It was brilliant.
We watched a 50-year-old Latino woman and a 43-year-old Latino woman.
Yeah, shaking their thing.
And I couldn't be happier.
It was.
I love the fact that it was also political, right under the nose of the president. It was everything a halftime Super Bowl should be.
So let's invite them back next year.
Yeah, if they could just keep doing that till J-Lo's like 75, and then maybe knock it on the head.
J-Lo at 75 will still probably look better than
Donald Trump.
Yeah,
but
Melania.
Yeah.
Oh no. But yeah, no. It was
the only thing that let it down was that Pitbull came out dressed as a cross between a condom and Ali G. It was a bit weird.
Yeah, could have done without him.
Yeah, but no, more of that, please. So anyway, thank you for joining us all season long on the Snap UK podcast. It's been a pleasure broadcasting for you. We'll be here throughout the off-season in the run-up to the draft and everything else that happens. So keep your ears out for us. For the final time this season, though, we'll take a knee. Goodbye.